Welcome to Darshan America, folks. We come to you from Washington, D.C. My name is Ramesh Bhutani.
And I'm Astha Verma. Well, you know, Ramesh, this is an exciting time of year. First of all, as all of you know, tomorrow's Halloween, which means, you know, the fun side of ourselves comes out, and we can be anybody we want that day without penalty. So it should be fun. Certainly watching the kids come by to trick or treat should be a lot of fun. But there's a lot of fun happening in the political landscape as well. As all of you know, Tuesday is the big election. It's the midterm elections, and we will finally see what happens with all of these close races that are occurring between the Republicans, the Democrats, and even these Tea Party candidates.
You know, what you're reading are all the liberal newspapers and the others. They always tell you that the Democrats are winning. You know, never the Republicans. I still remember in 1994, living here in D.C., you would have never believed that all of a sudden so many Republicans can get elected. So living here in Washington, D.C., sometimes we don't have a clue. So it will be, to you and I, it'll still be news to find out who won and who lost.
Well, actually, it'll be in those close races in the Midwest and in these other states. You know, I think the western side of the country and the eastern side of the country usually are very predictable in how their races go. But it's the Midwest where I think things are very interesting this year.
And all the bigwigs are in trouble. Have you heard of Harry Reid out in Nevada? He's the majority leader of the Senate. He's in trouble.
Nancy Pelosi.
Steny Hoyer in our backyard. How much advertising is he doing? I never heard his advertising before this, but this year he's going in because he's afraid too.
I think it's not just Democrats and it's not just Republicans. It's this mentality of out with the old and in with the new.
Seems like the incumbents are in trouble. But regardless, folks, you make sure you go to polls Tuesday.
It should be exciting.
Yes.
And if that wasn't enough excitement, folks, we have here in Washington, D.C., a rally that'll be taking place. This is put together by Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert. And, you know, opinions are mixed on this rally. I mean, on the one hand, being political satirists the way they are wisecrackers. And, you know, having this rally right before the midterm elections is a way, some people say, to drum up that sort of political momentum. And in some way, it might help to get people to go out and vote. On the other hand, there are some people that are kind of tired of the hoopla. And they're kind of saying, look, there's just no real need for a rally like this. It's more of a political stunt designed to achieve exactly nothing.
Exactly nothing. It's demystifying all of those legitimate causes that come to Washington, D.C. I mean, these guys don't understand. They're killing our business. We invite demonstrators from all over the world for real causes. And this guy's coming and demonstrating for no cause, blowing our cover.
Well, you know, it could end up actually helping the political process in that, okay, people might pay attention to some of the topics that they raise. They sometimes say what we feel inside, but they say it with political abandon, right? Because they're not on any side of the fence. And in a way, it's good to have that voice be out there as a way to represent people. But the rally, I don't think it's going to serve any real purpose.
President Obama was concerned enough that he actually made a trip and appeared on his show before the rally.
Well, in other news, especially for Indians that have been eagerly awaiting for President Obama to visit, there's news that he will no longer be traveling to the Golden Temple. I was unfortunate.
Oh, my God, we did that last week.
What they're saying is that the president decided not to go because per the Indian custom of covering your head while going to a temple, President Obama realized, well, if he did that, you know, he could be perceived differently by other people. People take pictures, and if they see him with a headscarf, maybe he
His last pictures are still circulating.
That's right, where, you know, people were upset that he came off looking a little too associated with the Muslims because he wore a headdress. I think that's all kind of ridiculous. You know, at some point, I was hoping for a compromise. I did read about a compromise where they thought maybe he would wear a baseball cap. I thought that was a perfect solution. Wear a baseball cap. It achieves the purpose and yet gives him his all-American look. But apparently it's still being decided, but I hope he changes his mind. I hope he decides to go. It would be good for the country and good for him. But in another story I read, this is, you know, just to show the sign of the times, the U.S. has actually booked all 547 rooms at the Taj for President Obama's visit.
That's a great show of support.
It is a great show of support. Yeah. And I think it's good for President Obama to make the visit. I think it's good for India that he come and visit the very place where those attacks took place and to show that, yes, the country can recover.
And you know, they're also working on the civil nuclear deal. They're going to try and repair it, sort of. But also, Boeing is going to get a great big order. They're going to sign up in front of President Obama and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh a few business deals, which is normal when two heads of state meet. They got to sign some deals. So it's going to be good for him to go up there. The next story is about how much does one make. You know, it is the ultimate gossip. Everyone wants to know what the neighbors are making. Today, because of the internet, it's possible if you want to know what the people in Capitol make, every aide, every congressman, every senator, yeah, you can find that out. Washingtonian has done a survey, and government folks are not making that kind of money. It is the pension and the medical benefits that they have a lot of. But salaries, they don't. For instance, President Obama makes $400,000. Nancy Pelosi makes $223,000. Harry Reid makes somewhere around $200,000 too. But imagine this. The guy who made it famous when he said, "I am not a potted plant." You remember? Mr. Brandon, he was the lawyer. He makes $1.91 million.
You know, salaries are so misleading because at the end of the day, people have book deals. They have appearances. And so the salary becomes the smallest component of what they actually make in a year, right? I mean, everything else is so much larger than their salary. If you just look at that one number, you know that Mayor Adrian Fenty, for example, who apparently only makes $138,000 a year, he's living a larger life than that. We all know it. And it's because of everything else, not just his salary.
But now imagine this, folks. Secretary of Defense Robert Gates